Keeping a phone on silent is often perceived as a simple preference, a matter of convenience or focus. However, when this behavior becomes constant rather than situational, it usually reflects deeper psychological patterns. For many individuals, the silent mode is not about avoiding noise, but about controlling access. It becomes a psychological boundary between the self and the outside world. A way to regulate emotional exposure. One of the most common psychological traits behind this habit is heightened sensitivity to external demands. People who feel overwhelmed easily tend to experience notifications as micro-intrusions. Each vibration or sound triggers a subtle stress response, even if they do not consciously recognize it. Over time, silencing the phone becomes a defensive habit, a way to reduce perceived pressure and regain a sense of internal calm. Another important factor is control. Silence gives the illusion of autonomy. When the phone is silent, the individual decides when to respond rather than being pulled into immediate reaction. This behavior is especially common in people who feel that others constantly expect availability from them. Keeping the phone silent becomes a quiet rebellion against constant accessibility and unspoken obligations. There is also a strong link between silent mode usage and emotional avoidance. Messages and calls carry emotional content, expectations, and sometimes confrontation. For individuals who struggle with anxiety or unresolved interpersonal tension, the phone becomes a source of anticipatory stress. Silence delays emotional engagement, allowing the person to stay in a controlled psychological space for longer periods. People who grew up in environments where emotional demands were unpredictable often develop this habit unconsciously. As children, they learned that attention could arrive suddenly and disrupt their emotional balance. In adulthood, notifications replicate that unpredictability. The silent phone becomes a way to recreate emotional safety and predictability that was missing earlier in life. Interestingly, this behavior is not always linked to introversion. Many socially active individuals also keep their phones silent. In these cases, the motivation is not social withdrawal, but emotional filtration. They may enjoy interaction, but only on their own terms. Silence allows them to manage energy, deciding when they are psychologically available rather than socially obligated. Chronic phone silence can also indicate decision fatigue. Constant communication requires constant micro-decisions. Reply now or later, explain or ignore, engage or disengage. For people already mentally overloaded, silence simplifies the environment. Fewer stimuli mean fewer decisions, even if that simplification comes at the cost of delayed communication. Some individuals associate silence with emotional self-protection. They may fear disappointing others by not responding quickly enough. Ironically, by silencing the phone, they avoid the immediate awareness of missed messages, postponing guilt and anxiety. This creates a temporary emotional relief, even though the underlying tension remains unresolved. In certain cases, keeping the phone silent is a learned coping strategy for past emotional overload. People who have experienced periods of excessive demands, conflicts, or emotional chaos often develop a strong need for psychological quiet. The silent phone becomes symbolic, representing a controlled environment where emotional input is limited and predictable. It is also worth noting the connection between silent mode and hypervigilance. Some individuals keep their phones silent but check them compulsively. This paradox reveals an internal conflict, a desire to avoid disturbance combined with an inability to fully disconnect. The silence does not remove anxiety. It merely shifts it into anticipation. Over time, this habit can influence relationships. Others may interpret silence as distance, disinterest, or emotional unavailability. The individual, however, often perceives it as necessary self-regulation. This mismatch in interpretation can create subtle relational tension, especially when communication expectations are not openly discussed. Psychologically healthy use of silence is context-dependent. The issue arises when silence becomes permanent rather than intentional. When someone feels unable to turn notifications on without discomfort, it suggests unresolved anxiety or control issues rather than simple preference. Ultimately, keeping a phone on silent all the time is rarely just about sound. It reflects how a person relates to boundaries, emotional demands, and control. It shows how they manage anxiety, protect mental space, and negotiate availability in a world that constantly demands attention. Understanding this behavior requires looking beyond technology and into the emotional economy of the individual.